very well, thanks. I'm thinking I need to get some bone broth into my life and maybe like spice up my sex life.
I know, right? There's so many great tips. It's like, okay, we're fueling our fire for sure. Well, thank you for being patient with us. We really appreciate it. And
Thank you. I'm happy to be here, and I love that the way we're fueling each other is by in so many different ways. And so my goal today, of course, I'm thrilled to be here, fueling fires alongside so many amazing women. But my goal here today is to take you guys on a little journey and I hope you will come along with me as I sort of share my insights on how I found my authentic voice and purpose. I have a 20 plus broadcasting career, and I've taken a lot of twists and turns, and I hope you want to come along with me for a little journey. So when you look at authenticity and finding your authentic voice, if you ask the experts, they basically tell you that there's three things you have to do. You have to have, or basically cultivate these three things. You have to have a strong sense of identity. You have to understand the kind of impact that you want to have on people, and you have to master your skills. Well, I wholeheartedly agree with this, but when I started out in television 20 years ago, I didn't know who I was. I certainly didn't know the impact I wanted to make, and I certainly was not a master. But with enthusiasm, openness of mind, and a sense of adventure, and a lot of courage, I did find my way to an authentic voice and an authentic purpose, and I feel like I've managed to stay true to it. So how did this happen? This is what I want to take you through today. So let me take you back to the beginning. It's 1998, and the Red Hot Chili Peppers are on heavy rotation on my iPod, and my eyebrows are super, super skinny. I've just finished my post-secondary, and I'm working all sorts of random behind-the-scenes TV jobs, an editor, a writer, a disgruntled coffee delivery person, and I'm having a good time, but there's just something missing. I'm just not feeling the fire that I should. And so basically I started to think, well, why is this? I've done my schooling. I'm working in the industry that I always wanted to. And then I realized it's my parents' fault. They gifted me a microphone and a recorder at age 8 and basically ruined me for any other career. Thanks, Mom and Dad. Yes, I wanted to be, needed to be, had to be on camera. I just didn't know how to make it happen. Now, I may not look at now because, I've kind of figured out some stuff, but back then, 20 plus years ago, I didn't fit the mold of the tradition. Statuesque, a great wardrobe. I was, and still am, kind of average in size with, I had a short little punky kind of skater girl haircut and a wardrobe that could probably only be described as sort of quirky. I remember actually sitting in quite a few audition rooms back then thinking, what the hell am I doing in this room with a bunch of knockouts? But for some reason, I just knew, somewhere deep down, I knew that the enthusiasm that I had for the work was 1,000 times more powerful than any beauty. I also believed that this enthusiasm that I knew I possessed was going to be absolutely impossible for others to resist. And in some ways, in many ways, and many times, I was right. You see, I was stoked, which by definition means being in an enthusiastic or exhilarated state. And man, was I ever stoked. I bounced gleefully from grueling gig to gig without sleep, without complaint. I was an absolute machine. Now, I know not everybody has the personality or the energy to do this, but I can't stress how important it is to find that enthusiasm and excitement within yourself and find a way to share it, whether it's through words or for actions. But I can guarantee you that if you share that energy, that enthusiasm, it will help you when you come up against the challenges that you inevitably will in any business. It will connect you to other stoked folks, which are the people you want to be rolling with. And it will open so many doors. It certainly did for me. Okay, so now we're stoked. So now what? For me, the next steps to finding your authentic voice and purpose, it's essentially a journey of self-discovery. It came to me when I was forced to take a chance. And this courage under fire moment that I went through changed everything for me. It began with a little script for a recruiting video for an international language school. I know, sounds really sexy. Well, this script, I labored over it, version after version, draft after draft. Finally, after I think probably 10 tries, the producer finally signed off on it and began with pre-production and casting. When the time came for shoot day, the producer also asked me if I wanted to sit in as script supervisor during the shoot. Of course, I jumped at the opportunity because it was another chance to learn, and I could keep an eye on those on-camera people to see how they did it. Now, I had written the role for the host. I knew every line. I think I had some idea, even though I was new to the game, of what the role needed. And production hired a lovely young woman to do the role, but after a few takes, it became quite obvious that she wasn't the right fit. This is when the producer took me aside and asked me if I could step in and do the job. Now, I didn't know if I could, but I knew that I would certainly give it a shot, because what did I have to lose? Nothing. The only problem is that I literally rolled out of bed that day and gone straight to set. No shower, no makeup, baseball hat, like certainly not camera ready. So I burned back home in my crappy car, showered up, grabbed the only one cute shirt that I had in my closet at the time, raced back to set, did the job, and absolutely killed it. It was incredible. I'll never forget the moment, because that's when I knew that I was made for this. I was designed for it. Now, let me remind you, I had very little experience at this stage of the game, but I was so stoked and so unafraid to fail that it just all came together for me. I still look at this day as my essentially TSN turning point, because that video that I did that day found its way onto the desk of a TV producer in Vancouver. And within a few months, I had been hired to the #1 station in the province in a dream role as an entertainment and lifestyle and community reporter. They called me Erin out there because I was out there on the scene. And it truly was big risk, huge reward. Now, with that new gig came new hurdles, of course, like every new gig. And the biggest being criticism. Now, I know this isn't unique to me. It happens to everyone in every field. But back then, there wasn't really social media. A lot of people watch television, and so criticism came at you face to face. Like, it wasn't uncommon for me to be in the grocery store and have someone come up to me and say, "Why do you talk so much with your hands?" And, why do you seem so hyper? And my personal favorite, "You can't be that happy and excited for real." Well, of course I was happy and excited. I was doing what I wanted to do, what I was born to do, and I was doing it with authenticity, and I was doing what felt real to me. I decided right then and there that I was not going to curb my enthusiasm or my over-the-top hand talking, which, as you can see, I still do. And I continued to wear clothes that reflected my personal style. I stayed true. And although, I did spruce up a little bit. And I didn't let colleagues or viewers or supermarket haters steal my stoke, ever. I'd come to another landmark realization, and this was that I needed to keep it real. And now I get it. Some of us, we all have times where we need to fake it till we make it a little bit. I certainly have done that over the years. But if this becomes the norm, you may actually start to believe this false narrative or this false persona that you've created. And that is not the right route to finding your authentic voice. So I made it my mission to continue to keep it real, both on camera and off. And this led me to some great successes. I hosted a talk show. I hosted a fabulous show on Home and Garden Television, HGTV Canada, called Makeover Wish, where I got a chance to reward wonderful people with home renos and makeovers. Such a good job. I met and married the man of my dreams. And I continued, even during my busiest times, to make my family and my friends and the things that I really valued a priority. But I did reach a point later in my career, as we all do, we hit those speed bumps when I was an entertainment reporter, where I realized I wasn't excited or stoked anymore. I guess you could say I was maybe phoning it in a little bit. You see, the industry was changing, and my job was becoming less about storytelling and more about gossip spreading, which was not my jam. So I started to look for ways that I could grow within the show and take on projects that were more challenging and had a greater impact. I also stepped outside of the show, and I produced and hosted a TV pilot called Beer versus Wine. And the pilot never went anywhere. We tried, but I learned a ton, namely that I do not want to try to sell TV shows because it is way too hard. But I talked about these new desires a lot with friends, with colleagues. My poor husband had to hear about it a lot. I even had a few conversations with the universe. And then one day I found myself in LA doing a bunch of interviews for CBS. Now, if you're unfamiliar, if you don't know a lot about television, an event like this is called a junket. And typically it takes place at a hotel. And what they do is it's either a network or it's a TV show or it's a movie. And they bring in journalists from all over the world who cycle through the rooms, and you do a bunch of interviews in one day. And it's really fun and really hectic, and it can be quite intense. Now, that day was a great day because I chatted with so many interesting people from CBS, including LL Cool J and Anna Faris and the unstoppable Jeff Probst. Now, Jeff was there promoting the new season of Survivor. And Jeff is both the host and executive producer. And he has an unrivaled understanding and stoke for that show. I had always been a huge fan, and I thought, well, isn't this interesting? I'm at this point in my career where I'm having all these questions. I'm questioning where I want to go next. And I'm sitting across someone who began their career as a host and then went on to an executive producer role for one of the most popular and longest lasting reality shows television has ever seen. I thought there has to be an opportunity here. So after the interview, I took a chance. I did something that, to be honest, we're not really encouraged to do as reporters. I asked Jeff Probst, I went up to him and I asked him if he would be willing to become sort of my email mentor. And he was gracious and kind. And before I knew it, he and I were exchanging emails, and I was asking him every question under the sun about television. And during one of these conversations, I was feeling a little brave that day. I just casually said, maybe and take this conversation in person. And, while I'm there, maybe I could host a show for my Canadian network and show what it's like being behind the scenes on Survivor. It was a very bold and cheeky move, but hell, it was time to put it out there. And am I ever grateful that I did? Because I went on after that to host 3 network specials for Survivor, plus a podcast. I traveled to Cambodia and Fiji. I worked harder and pushed myself both personally and professionally more than I ever had in my life. I had never worked harder, and I never felt more alive. And that work during those years was me operating as my authentic best. I was stoked. I was taking chances. I was keeping it real. And I had been the one to put it out there. And that, my friends, is how Erin out there found her way.
Wow. It was like, that was the perfect timing. And that was so beautiful. I was just memorized by what you were saying. I think that's so interesting that you just were like, you know what? I don't care if this maybe isn't the right thing to do. I'm just going to ask him, and look where it got you. Right. I think a lot of people, this kind of seems to be a reoccurring theme actually tonight, just like taking the risk to actually fuel your fire or make things happen in your life. Because if you don't, nothing's going to change. Right.
Absolutely. Well, and really, and I think this came up a couple times within, my little story, was just, you have nothing to lose. Like, the worst someone can say is no, and you never know where it'll lead you. And I think being open and brave and adventurous and just game for it can really
Yes,
change your
be
life.
game for it. I like that. Well, thank you so much. Your story was so inspiring, just from how you started to how you ended tonight. I was totally, just loving everything you were saying. So thank you so much for being here with us. We really appreciate, your time and your support and making this happen. And I know a lot of people, really loved what you were sharing. It just said you have a beautiful voice. So definitely, you are definitely meant for what you're doing. So thank you for being here, and we hope to stay connected with you and have you back. Yes,
Thank you so much. Thank you, and good luck, everybody. Keep fueling your fires. Thank you so much for having me.